By the end of this episode, you will see why this man killed dozens of young women during the 70s. We will go back to one of the most famous serial killers the world has ever known. And with him, we will basically discover the definition of the word serial killer. Because before him, the idea was not common or widely known that there could be such a thing as a serial killer. He is the most famous serial killer that the United States of America has ever known. Who is he? Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, who would commit his crimes in the early 70s. Why was he the most famous? Why was there so much talk, mystery, and secrets surrounding Ted's crimes? For a number of reasons that made Ted and his crimes stand out. First, Ted Bundy didn't have the personality of a killer at all, let alone a serial killer. The man was handsome, good-looking, well-built, studying law and psychology, with a big future ahead of him. He participated in election campaigns, supported the Republicans, and people actually saw him as one of the political figures who could one day lead the country. Ted Bundy absolutely didn't have the personality of a criminal. But what also made him famous was the method of killing his victims. It contained a lot of brutality, a lot of hatred, a lot of sickness. What also distinguished Ted Bundy is that to this day, we still don't know exactly how many victims he had. And for that reason, he became one of the most infamous criminals. Officially, it is said that he killed around 30 girls. 30. Some investigators raise the number to 50. Others take it up to even 100. Why don't we know the real number of Ted Bundy's victims? Simply because he didn't keep count. In short, he would kill and not count, and what made counting even harder is one of the characteristics of his murders that I will mention to you later. These are the reasons that made Ted Bundy famous, maybe the most famous. Do you want to know what he did and exactly how he did it? Welcome to Real Cases Detective, Made to be a Killer series, in the episode of Ted Bundy, the Handsome Butcher. The story begins in the 70s, in the United States of America. The 70s, which you should know were the years of the hippies, the years of the spread of the hippie movement in America, and then later in the world. The hippie was a lifestyle of a group of young people, especially those who were against traditions, against the system, against laws, against all strict and structured rules. They showed this mainly through their clothing. They were also against war, against the war that was happening at that time in Vietnam. They had principles and ideas based on freedom, liberation, rights, enjoyment, and other things. And this, of course, was especially widespread in American universities, including the University of Seattle in the state of Washington. Not Washington, D.C., but the state of Washington at Seattle University. It was, like many other states with students, a place where this mindset was spread and students were living in it, including Ted Bundy. The university campus had a dormitory, and it would begin to witness strange and shocking events starting from early 1974. We are in January 1974 in a dormitory where Karen Sparks was. Karen, who was sleeping on a Friday night, she hadn't gone out like the rest of her friends. She stayed in her room and slept. The time was 2 a.m. The atmosphere was quiet, no noise in her room or in the rooms of her nearby friends. The place was dark, but there was a shadow moving in the room. Karen heard no noise, but suddenly she felt someone breathing on her face. She opened her eyes and immediately found her eyes facing the eyes of a person on top of her, placing his hand over her mouth so she wouldn't scream, and immediately began hitting her on the head and on different parts of her body. She didn't move, frozen in place, shocked, not knowing if this was some kind of prank from her friends. That thought crossed her mind at first. She still didn't understand what was happening. Her room was next to her friends' rooms. We are in a dorm full of male and female students. Karen was being beaten. What started as hitting with hands turned into hitting with a metal object. On her face, her side, her chest. Blood began to flow everywhere, from the pillow to the bed to the wall. For Karen, this was the end. She was living her last moments. He wouldn't leave her until she's killed. And suddenly, a sound. They hear someone talking, shouting loudly, a voice coming toward the room or from the adjacent wall. This terrified the attacker. Just as he entered through the window, he escaped again through the window. But what about Karen? She was no longer moving, left as she was, soaked in blood, no words, no movement. And even that voice, in the end, didn't come. Morning came, her friends waited. Where is Karen? Why hasn't she come down yet? It wasn't like her. She usually wakes up early, prepares herself, have her coffee, and joins them. Among them was her close friend Scott. She didn't come, so Scott went to check on her in her room. And here was the shocking scene. Karen lying on her bed, not moving. But luckily, she was breathing. She wasn't dead. Scott called the police and ambulance. She was saved. She lived, thanks to that sound that scared the attacker away. Who did that sound belong to? It was Scott. Because when Scott sleeps, he makes noises. He sometimes talks in his sleep. Do you know that situation? When a person talking while sleeping. In Scott's case, he talks loudly, almost shouting. The attacker thought someone was coming, so he fled. Karen survived. But would she recognize who did this to her? Never. The room was dark, and he was wearing a mask. She only saw his eyes, and in that state of terror, being silenced and beaten, she remembered nothing. Karen survived. But what the university dorm at Seattle would soon witness would spread terror among all the girls. Over the next months, several girls would disappear. Linda Ann Healy, 21 years old, disappeared in February 1974. Donna Gail Manson, 19 years old, disappeared in March 1974. Susan Rancourt, 18 years old, disappeared on April 17, 1974. Strange, mysterious disappearances. We know that the girls vanished, but nothing else. Where were the cameras? There were no surveillance cameras. It's 1974. No mobile phones, no DNA, no modern investigation tools. Either someone sees you and reports it, or no one ever finds you. And that's exactly what Ted Bundy did. No one saw him. He operated at night, in darkness, when the victim was asleep, and she would suddenly disappear. The fate of the victims was extremely painful, full of violence and brutal killing methods. Let me say it now, so I don't repeat it later. Ted Bundy used the same method with his victims. After assaulting them, when he was still in Washington, he would take them to the forests of Seattle. There, while the victim was still alive, he would continue the assault, then torture and kill her. The torture included biting so severely that he would tear flesh with his teeth. Then further assaults on living and even dead victims. Then he would cut off the victim's head because he collected heads. He kept them. He would take the head home and store it in his refrigerator and bury the body in the forest. This is why the number of his victims is still unknown. Many bodies were found without heads, and they couldn't be identified. At first, it continued like this for months. It was easy for him. He breaks in at night, people are asleep, he takes the victim, assaults her, buries her. It became too easy, so he wanted to make it more challenging. He started targeting victims during the day in public places. We are still in 1974, July 1974. The weather is hot, and people go to the lake, Lake Sammamish. A party is happening, people swimming, barbecuing, enjoying themselves. And among them, of course, Ted Bundy. He arrived with a cast on his arm, his right arm supposedly broken. He came asking for help, saying he wanted to go back to his car but didn't know how to load his boat. "Can you come help me?" But he didn't ask men, he asked women. He was handsome, his arm was broken. Why not help him? That's what Denise Naslund, 18 years old, did. She agreed to help him and went with him to the car. As soon as they reached it, while she was about to grab something from the back seat, he struck her on the head with the cast. He put her in the car, raped her, took her to the forest, finished his crime, buried her, and came back to the lake. Yes, he wasn't done that day. He needed more than one victim. He approached multiple girls. "My arm is broken. Can you help me?" Many said no, but they heard his name for the first time. "Hi, I'm Ted." He continued, and this time he took another victim by force. Janice Ott, 23 years old. She went to the restroom with her dog, left her friends, and never came back. Her fate was the same as the others. Now the police had 2 missing girls, and a name was circulating. Ted, a man asking for help, driving a Volkswagen Beetle. Multiple witnesses saw him. Finally, they had something. But it wasn't that easy. When police made a list of men named Ted with that car, they found around 3,000 names, and worse, no computers, no databases. Only a sketch that looked very much like him, but no confirmed photo of Ted Bundy at the time. Ted realized Washington wasn't safe anymore. So he left, over 932 miles away, to Utah, and started again. In Utah, Nancy Wilcox disappeared on October 2nd, 1974. Laura Aim, 17 years old, disappeared on October 31st, 1974. But here, something would happen. Something that would become the beginning of the end for Ted Bundy. Carol Duranch, 18 years old, a student at the University of Utah, went shopping as usual at the mall. As she was about to leave, she found a man wearing a police uniform who told her, "Miss, your car has been stolen." She went with him to check the car, looked at what was there and what wasn't, thanked him and said, "Thank you very much, officer." "No need to thank me, ma'am, but you need to come with me to file a report so this doesn't happen again to you or to others." Of course, he's a police officer, nothing to fear. A police officer driving a Volkswagen Beetle. He took her in the car, supposedly heading to the police station. They took a road that Carol knew very well was not the road to the station. After a while, they reached a somewhat empty place. He put a gun on her head and said, "If you scream or say a word, I'll empty this gun into your head." Carol was in shock, but she noticed that Ted Bundy smelled of alcohol. He was slightly drunk. She took advantage of that, hit him, he lost control inside the car, and she managed to open the door and run. He chased her, but luckily, even though the place was empty, a car passed by. She screamed for help, and Ted ran away. This was the first time one of Ted's victims survived and saw him clearly. For the second time, a sketch of Ted Bundy was made, but this time it was extremely accurate. Carol described him in such detail that the sketch was almost identical to his real face. One of Ted's tricks was that he constantly changed his appearance. Long hair, short hair, with a beard, without a beard, so he wouldn't be recognized. And even with this sketch, he still wasn't identified. Why? Didn't they already have a sketch from Seattle and now one from Utah? Why not connect them? Because at that time, police between different states in the U.S. didn't share informations. There was no connection between cases in different states, and this is something Ted Bundy understood very well, since he studied it. He even worked helping in a Republican governor's campaign and with the Department of Justice, where he realized that each state worked separately. If a crime happened in one state, the other one might not know about it. So he moved from a state to another. Now that he was known in Utah, it was time to move again. He went to Colorado, over 932 miles away, and started a new series of crimes. Karen Campbell, 23, disappeared January 12, 1975. Julie Cunningham, 26, disappeared March 15, 1975. Denise Oliverson, 24, disappeared April 6, 1975. Melanie Cooley, 18, disappeared April 15, 1975. Lynette Culver, 12, disappeared May 6, 1975. Susan Curtis, 15, disappeared June 27, 1975. The crimes continued, many more victims, until, by coincidence, he was stopped in August 1975. He was driving normally, confident as always. He didn't look like a killer, clean, calm, even studying law and knowing his rights. A police patrol noticed him. He passed once, then came back again with his lights off. They stopped him. The officer searched the car with a flashlight and found a bag in the back seat. Inside, ropes, a mask, gloves, tools. The officer thought not a killer, a thief. He was arrested as a suspected burglar. But this was the beginning of the end. Do you remember the victim who survived? Carol Duranch. She was brought in, and she identified him. That's the man who tried to kidnap me. The first trial of Ted Bundy began, and something shocking. Many people didn't believe he could be guilty. Many women still liked him. People from the Republican Party even organized a defense and raised funds for him. Impossible! This man couldn't do such crimes. But the evidence was precise. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. He wouldn't serve it. He escaped twice. The first time from the courthouse library window, the second time from inside prison. He used a small saw to cut through the ceiling of his cell. It was made of plaster. He crawled through ventilation ducts, reached a guard's room, and escaped during a storm. After escaping, he committed his most horrific crimes. Among them, Kimberly Leach, a 12-year-old girl, his last victim. Same method: kidnapping, assault, torture, murder, decapitation. 6 months later, he was arrested again, by chance. He was driving a stolen car when police stopped him. When asked to step out, he tried to grab the officer's gun, but failed and was arrested. At first, police again thought he was just a car thief, but he told them, "My name is Ted Bundy. Tell your bosses, they'll know who I am." And they did. By then, FBI was searching for him. He became one of the most wanted criminals in America. His trial became historic. He loved the spotlight, spoke a lot, played the victim, and even defended himself without lawyers. Women still attended court to support him. He was sentenced to death by electric chair on January 24, 1989. After 10 years of appeals, the execution was carried out. Outside the prison, crowds gathered, almost like a festival. People celebrated, shouting against him. Even until the end, Ted Bundy never revealed the true number of his victims. Officially around 30 to 35, possibly 50, maybe even 100. Many bodies were never identified. Now, the question, was Ted Bundy made to be a killer? All his victims had similarities: young, beautiful, long hair, often parted in the middle, resembling his ex-girlfriend Diane Edwards, also called Stephanie. She left him, calling him a failure with no ambition. At that time, he was shy, isolated, insecure. After the breakup, he returned to his family and discovered shocking truths. His sister was actually his mother, his father was unknown, and his grandfather, possibly abusive and violent, raised him. His childhood included violence, abuse, and exposure to disturbing material. Later, his mother left and married a man named Bundy, giving Ted his name. Psychologists say he had multiple psychological issues shaped by his childhood. But not everyone with trauma becomes a killer. Ted developed hatred, especially toward women. He later became successful. His ex returned and agreed to marry him, but he rejected her. 2 days later, his crimes began. Maybe it was revenge, maybe deeper psychological damage. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed by electric chair. Massive celebrations took place across America, especially outside the prison. The end of a monster. The end of one of the most infamous serial killers in the American, and perhaps the world's history. This was the story of Ted Bundy, known as the Handsome Butcher. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode in Real Cases Detective.